Everybody ready? Oh, she's ready, okay. I'll quickly get started here. As soon as the two high mucky mucks over there quit having their little session here. You're trying to be political or something here? Who's the suit behind you?
Adam Darius.
Hi, Adam. You want to join us?
Yeah.
For you guys that don't know it, this is your big high mucky muck, president of the ASLMU back there. He has to go to class, so he said he'd drop in and just spend a second, and then he has to run off to class. Because even when you're president of ASLMU, you still have to pass your classes. It's kind of a requirement.
That's true.
Yeah. Anyway, I want to get started. We have a wonderful, wonderful treat tonight. It's fun for me because Marshall Goldsmith, our guest tonight, started here at about the same time I did, way back in the 70s. None of you guys, except a few old folks in the room here, none of you guys were alive then even. Marshall taught here from 1975 to 1980. I will tell you this, and next week in my classes I'm going to take a poll. Who's crazier, Marshall or I? I don't know how Loyola survived Marshall being here, because he's a wonderman. He's a character. I mean, some of you guys think I'm insane. I've proven it to you. Marshall, I think, is ahead of me. I think Marshall's a little crazier than I am. So we're going to have a test next week and ask who's crazier. But before we get started with Marshall, I want to say a little about him. The first thing I want to do is introduce his family that's in the front row here. Lyda, would you stand up, please? Lyda also used to be at our was the chief shrink in charge of the counseling center over in Malone. And how the hell she stayed with Marshall all these years after you find out what he's doing. Hey, that's what it is. He's your case study. You're doing a whole PhD thesis on Marshall. This is good. And I'd like to introduce you to their daughter, Kelly. Yale?
Yeah.
She's a very bright young lady studying for a PhD at Yale on Marshall, I think you're doing.
Yeah, I am.
That's your PhD thing.
Yes, Dad.
But she does hold the distinction, which I always chuckle about and have to mention, that she was on the Survivor TV show when?
2001, Africa, the third season.
Okay. And she made it, I don't know what the hell this means because I never watched the damn show, but that's because I'm old, you know. But she got to the second half jury or something like that. I guess that's fairly good that you get to the second half of the show and survive and all that. And then the producers of the show hired her to work for them, so she had an interesting little run with these guys, and it was kind of fun for her. But now she's being academic and she's not worrying about running around in a bikini in Africa or anything like that. Right? So, Marshall Goldsmith, we're going to give a little award to. My easiest introduction is to just read what's on here for him. We happen to be fortunate in that the Hilton family and the Hilton Foundation indirectly with Harry, you did a good job here. It's really tied together. Thank you very much. The Hilton Foundation endowed the Conrad Hilton Chair of Entrepreneurship, which I happen to have the absolute pleasure of holding for a lot of reasons, because it gives me some funding where I can do some good for you kids and have different things like my Diamond Awards, and my Diamonds are here tonight. And it's a wonderful thing. So we started, you're the 25th Conrad Hilton Distinguished Entrepreneur Award we have given, where we try and pick people in all fields to honor for their outstanding entrepreneurial activity. Well, some may say, what are you giving it to this guy for? Because he is totally in the corporate world. Absolutely in the corporate world. But he's an entrepreneur who's figured out how to make a ton of money off the corporate suits. He's got them corporate suits paying him just a bucket load of money to do what he does. And that's very entrepreneurial, and I want you to listen carefully to what he's saying today. First of all, I made a promise to tell you how much he gets paid for what he does. And if you guys can't figure out something you can do like this, you're nuts. The other beauty of this is he has no product except his mind. Remember that. Remember, you can be an entrepreneur. You don't have to do a new fishing pole. You don't have to do a new car seat. You don't have to do a hard product. You've got tons of good stuff in your brain. You gotta get the hell out of the back row. Get up here. Get up here. You three guys, get the hell down here. You two over there, Turkey, get down here. Get down here. Madam, don't you sit back down. Get down here closer. Marshall is not gonna be able to talk tonight because he's got a bug. Okay? So he can't talk so loud tonight. And I'm lying like hell, but that's all right. What the hell are you doing back up there? Get down here. Get down here. Young lady, you trip anybody that goes up that far. Seriously, Marshall was able to come up with an entire business and make a very marvelous income strictly out of his mind. He figured out a talent he had. He was here, it was a wonderful faculty, fantastic faculty. Students helped him, he did really great work. But he ran across an opportunity and a guy hired him away from us. And he'll tell you the details of it. But it was strictly going out and helping people in business who are top executives to do their job better. Only in his mind did he come up with this business. That's about as entrepreneurial as you can get. He lives totally offline. He now has a company where he's got all sorts of people. He'll tell you about some of the people who work for him. You wouldn't believe some of the people that now work for him and what they used to do. This is marvelous. So Marshall, I'd like you to come up here. We give him a very nice little back row, get the hell down here. Put your hat on straight and get the hell down here. Get down here, get down here. Hey, you, don't go be going back. Hey, get down here. Get down here. Marshall is going to shoot marbles at anyone who sits in the back row, so you better get up here. Oh, look at him, he's going to the second or back row. Anyway, this says the Conrad Hilton Distinguished Entrepreneur Award, celebrating entrepreneurial excellence, exceptional achievement, and powerful leadership. Presented to Marshall Goldsmith, and I'll only read part of this. I won't read the whole thing here, all the things he's done. It was on the announcement of the award and the posters out there and that, but it does say, Global Executive Leadership Guru, Founder Marshall Goldsmith Partners, Magnificent Teacher, LMU Professor. And those are some pretty nice things to have after your name, I would say. We're very proud of him as not quite an alum of LMU because he never went to school here, but he's an alum of our teaching ranks, so LMU is proud to have him here as one of our own. And I'll put this over on the side as I often, you can't have a check. Okay. You gotta give your damn speech first. Okay. I'm putting it on the side here, I want all you guys to look at it, and I'll say what I always say. You guys look at that. And then you start thinking of when you're gonna be up here with me in the future, receiving one of these for what you've done in the world that's powerful. Because I've had kids here that were 17 years old receive this award. And I've had people that were very, very old receive this award. And Marshall's sort of very old. Actually, I can't believe it. He's 10 years younger than I am. I can't believe that. 11 years old. How did you get in here working as such a whippersnapper as a child? You were a child prodigy. But dead seriously, you guys, you will be up here someday. And you just got to start thinking in your mind, when will it be? How long will it take you? What year will you be up here to receive the Conrad Hilton Distinguished Entrepreneur Award? The dean promised me that he would keep me on here and give me one hell of a raise each year to carry on until each of you came up and got the award. So I'll be good until about 2080. And you put that in writing, did you, John? You said you were sending it.
Sorry, I missed that writing skill.
Oh, okay. In case you guys haven't met him, because you don't always, that's Dean John Wolahan, our and I will also point out here Rochelle Katz, who is our chief high mucking officer. She's the dean of the MBA program here, and George Hess up here is the dean of the undergraduate program. Even though it's entrepreneurship, all the big high mucky mucks in the administration of the school are here to hear Marshall. They all know how good an entrepreneur he is. Okay, I'll shut up. It's all yours.
Very happy to be here. Can everyone hear me okay? Everybody can hear me okay in the back? Okay. If you have any problems hearing me, just wave, okay, so we can hear me. My name is Marshall Goldsmith. I'll briefly introduce I guess I'll do more than briefly introduce myself. I talked to Fred, and my basic orientation, other than teaching classes, which is what I usually do, is kind of tell the story of my life. so that's what I'm going to be doing. Some Valley Station, Kentucky. Anybody here from Kentucky? Now, I noticed a certain anti-Kentucky bias in terms of schools, right? From a small town in Kentucky, Valley Station, Kentucky, I went to an engineering school called Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. Got an MBA at Indiana University, a PhD in college management at UCLA. Was a college professor here at Loyola for 4 or 5 years. I loved it here, had great experiences. George was here, Rochelle was here when I was here back in those days. And then actually I had Rochelle's job for a year or two. So I was one of the first people who was the associate dean of the MBA program back at Loyola. So I had a great experience here. Lyda was here. Kelly was born when we were here, so we had a lot of very fond, positive memories about the school. So then I was at Loyola, and that's when sort of the entrepreneurial thing kicked in. Loyola's always been a fine school. When I was here, they paid me $15,000 a year. Now, $15,000 a year seemed to be quite a bit of money. I met a man named Paul Hersey, H-E-R-S-E-Y. He was Hersey and Blanchard developed something called situational leadership. Ken Blanchard went on to become very famous. He wrote the book 1 Minute Manager. So I met this guy, Paul Hersey, and I learned what he did. And I kind of followed him around. So my first suggestion in terms of getting into the entrepreneurial world is meet other people who've done it before and follow them around. Well, I followed Paul Hersey around and kind of practiced teaching at Loyola the stuff that he was teaching to business executives. One day he got double booked. He said, "Do you think you can do what I do?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, I'm double booked. I need help. Do you think you can do it?" I said, "I don't know." I was making $15,000 a year. He said, "I'll pay you $1,000 per day." I said, "Sign me up, coach." I'm there. Now you have to realize this was 28 years ago. $1,000 for a day for a 28-year-old kid 28 years ago was a lot of money. I did a program for the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. I was saved by basically 2 things. 1, I'm bald, so I looked a lot older than I was. And 2, I was too stupid to understand how important these people were. These people are dealing with billions of dollars. I was just basically too stupid to appreciate how important they were. So I'm working with the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, did this program. They were pissed when I showed up. They were really pissed because, they were expecting him. Well, I showed up, and they had 2 weeks' worth of speakers, and I got ranked first place of all the speakers. Well, then they were happy. So Paul called him up, expecting to get his butt handed to him, and he said, "Well, I'm sorry I couldn't come. I had to send Marshall." I said, "Look, Paul, we were really pissed when you didn't show up, but of all the speakers, Marshall came in first place." Well, Paul was going to charge them $2,000 a day. That was his fee. But then he was going to reduce the fee to $1,000 because of me. Then he said, "Hell, he came in first place. Why reduce the fee?" So no fee reductions here. So he called me up and he said, "Do you mind if I make $1,000 and you make $1,000? I said, "Paul, I'm making $15,000 a year. You want to pay me $1,000 a day? I don't care if you make $50,000. And he said, "Do you want to do this again?" I said, "Sign me up." Now again, no offense to Loyola, I do love it here, but the $120,000 I got paid the first year I worked for them as opposed to the $15,000 here. I love it here, but not that much, right? So you all were nice, but you're not that nice, right? So that's basically how I got into the executive education business. And it is, from an interesting entrepreneurial point of view, an interesting business because basically what I sell is ideas. And what I sell is a service as opposed to a product. Now, I had a few experiences that really helped me when I was a PhD student at UCLA. I didn't realize how important they were at the time. But as I go into what I do for a living, you'll see how they shaped my business. What I do is basically 4 things. One is I teach classes. Now, teaching classes is what I love to do the most, same as I did at Loyola, only I teach classes for business executives. I teach at Dartmouth, I teach at Michigan, and then I teach, somebody's here from Boeing, I teach inside large corporations, Johnson & Johnson, IBM, big, huge corporations. My biggest client this year is a company called UBS, a large Swiss bank. I work with Motorola. So my clients are pretty much all multi-billion-dollar companies. What I'm most famous for is I do executive coaching. How many of you have heard the term executive coaching? And many of you have heard this. I'm probably the most famous executive coach in the world. So basically, that's what I do, is executive coaching. And it's a very interesting field. I'll talk about how I got into the coaching field, and that's basically what I'm most famous for. Then the third thing I do is write and edit books and articles. Now, I have one request for tonight, if everybody can write this down. Please go to www.marshallgoldsmithlibrary.com. This is my website, www.marshallgoldsmithlibrary.com. I give everything away. It's all free. It's got videos, articles, all kinds of stuff. So please go visit my website. It's my hobby. I've had visitors from 119 different countries come to my website in the past 4 months. So it's really neat, and it's kind of like what I like to do for fun. So then I write and edit. My new book is coming out in September. My new book is called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's about helping successful leaders get better. And then the final thing is I have a business. My business is called Marshall Goldsmith Partners. I don't own the business, and I don't manage the business. After I turned 55, I decided I don't really care about owning the business, don't care about managing the business. They just use my picture, and they send me money every month. So it's a very nice business. I don't have to do anything, and they just send money every month. So it's a fine business. So that's basically the 4 things I do. So life is good. Life is good. I live in Rancho Santa Fe, California, and the only hard part of my life is on American Airlines alone, I do have 8.5 million frequent flyer miles. So I am a mega, mega, mega flyer. Now, back at UCLA, a couple of experiences that shaped my life. What I do for a living is very interesting. I give executives feedback. Now, somebody here said you were from Boeing. Anybody else from Boeing? Oh, well, just one person from Boeing. Ed, but you're from Boeing. Yeah, Alan Mullally runs Boeing Commercial Aircraft. Oh, yeah. Anyway, he is at Boeing, yeah, they're flying the airplanes, right? Anyway, he was one of my coaching clients. One thing I do is I give executives feedback. So I actually sit there and tell executives what people really think of them. So I interview everyone around them. Let me describe basically how my coaching process works, which is a very fascinating process. First is I only work with people that follow my rules. I have a few basic rules. Rule number 1 is they have to get feedback from all their coworkers. By the way, have any of you ever had a jerky boss before? Raise your hand. Anybody have a jerky boss? Yeah, right. How much fun is that? Well, it's pretty hideous to have a jerky boss. Well, what I do is it's really nice because I not only help people get better, I make life better for everyone around them because I help people change their behavior. So my favorite client, I'll describe, I also do volunteer work. I was not in the Army. I was an anti-war protester as a kid. But after 9/11, I decided, I listened to General Shinseki, who was head of the Army, give a very moving speech. And I decided to donate what I did to the United States Army. So I did training programs for all the generals. And finally, General Shinseki, I was talking to him and said, maybe I'll be a coach for one of the top generals here in the Army. I said, Marshall, that's really nice of you. I know you're a volunteer. You cannot coach them all. If you could only coach one general, who would be the perfect general? I said, can you find me one that's patriotic, cares about our country, a great deal of ethics, integrity, values, tries to do what's right, technically gifted, brilliant, hardworking, dedicated to achieve, arrogant, stubborn, opinionated, know-it-all. Do you think you could find me one? He said, Marshall, we have a target-rich environment. Well, that's my favorite client. I work with a lot of very smart, hardworking, dedicated, gung-ho, stubborn, opinionated people. And have any of you ever had a boss who vaguely resembles such a person? Well, those are the kind of people that I work with every day. And what I do with my coaching clients is they get feedback. So they get feedback from everyone around them. I interview all their coworkers. I say, what's this person doing well? What do they need to do better? What do you have as advice for them? I develop reports. They don't get to see who said what. I go over the reports with them. They pick something to do better. And then I have a very simple model. I don't get paid if people don't get better. Better's not judged by me. Better's not judged by my clients. Better's judged by everyone around the clients. And as Fred and I discussed this, it's basically $250,000 a pop. So it's a pretty simple process. And I talk to the big boss and I say, if you or this guy gets better at this stuff as judged by these people, is it worth this money? Yes or no? The answer is no, don't hire me. The answer is yes, you can't lose. Either this person's going to get better and I get paid, the person doesn't get better, it's free. It's free. So that's basically what I do. I have rules, and the rules are not negotiable. all the executives I work with have to get feedback. They have to talk to people about what they learned. They have to apologize for previous sins. They have to involve their coworkers. They have to follow up on a religious basis, and they have to get remeasured. And if they don't do that, I just basically don't work with them. Why? I've got a research study I did with 86,000 people. They don't get better, and I don't get paid. It's not worth the effort. So that's basically what I do. Now, how did I get into this kind of crazy entrepreneurial business? I didn't realize it at the time, but this greatest learning I had to help me started when I was at UCLA. Now, again, I was a PhD student, and this was about 1972. Now, there was a term used in those days called hippie. So all of you know this term hippie, right? I was actually what was called a hippie. I actually had hair. This hair was long. I had a long beard, and I was a hippie. Now, I'm from Valley Station, Kentucky. So I'm at UCLA, and they had something called encounter groups, where you would sit around and talk about how you felt about everybody. For 3 weeks, I talked about people in Los Angeles. And the gist of my conversation was, people in Los Angeles are so screwed up. They wear these $75 sequin blue jeans, and they drive around in these yellow Rolls Royces, and they're plastic and materialistic, and they're not really into deep and heavy and meaningful things like, of course, me. They're plastic, materialistic, and all they want to do is impress others. For 3 weeks, I'm babbling on about people in Los Angeles. After about 3 weeks, the head of this little encounter group thing is a man named Dr. Tannenbaum. He's a full professor. He's just a great guy, famous man. He scratches his beard. He looks at me and he says, Marshall, who are you talking to? I said, well, I'm talking to the group. He said, who in the group are you talking to? I said, I guess I'm talking to everybody. He said, I don't know if you know this, but every time you've spoken, you've looked at only one person. You've addressed all your comments toward one person and seem interested in the opinion of only one person. Who's that person? Thought about it for a while. I said, you. And we said, that's right, me. He said, there are 12 other people. How come me? Well, you know how it is when you start digging a hole and you don't want to stop. A little more digging here. I said, Dr. Tannenbaum, I think you can understand the true significance of how screwed up it is to run around and try to impress people all the time. Well, he looks at me, scratches his beard, and he says, is there any chance the last 3 weeks all you've been doing is trying to impress me? What did I say? No. I said, I'm very disappointed. Well, I think you've missed everything I just said. He looked at me and he said, no, I think I understand. I look around the room, I see these 12 heads going like this, right? I hated his guts for 6 months. After 6 months, I looked in the mirror and said, thank you, Dr. Tannenbaum. You just taught me a good lesson. That's basically what I do for a living. I look at people and I share things with them that everybody else can see that they can't see in themselves. And their first reaction is almost always just like mine. Marshall, you're confused. And what do I have to say? Maybe not. Maybe I'm not confused. Maybe you're the one that's confused. Now, the next learning point I had at UCLA is another great example. This is when I was getting my PhD. And this is the best consulting advice I ever got in my life. By the way, have any of you thought about getting into a consulting type of business? Raise your hands. Good, several of you. Best consulting advice I got in my whole life is coming up. I'm a young PhD student at UCLA. Again, I think I know virtually everything in the world about every topic. I'm working down at the LA City Planning Department. Have any of you ever worked down at City Hall before? I'm working down at the LA City Planning Department, and I'm a typical young, self-righteous, know-it-all PhD student. So I'm always griping about things and complaining. And finally, Dr. Case is my dissertation advisor. He calls me and says, Marshall, I'm getting some feedback down there from City Hall. You're kind of negative and complaining and in a bad mood. What's the problem? I go, "Rah, rah, 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 rah." And he looked at me and he said, what a stunning breakthrough. You, Marshall Goldsmith, have discovered the city of Los Angeles government is inefficient. He said, what a stunning breakthrough. He said, I hate to tell you this, but my barber who cuts my hair every week figured that out years ago. Do you have any other problems? He goes, oh my goodness, stunning breakthrough number 2. You, the brilliant Marshall Goldsmith, have discovered that when you donate millions of dollars to a political candidate and they get elected, they're nicer to you than people that donate money to their opponents. He said, what another stunning breakthrough. He said, my barber figured that out several years ago too. He looked at me and he said, Marshall, he said, I'm going to give you 2 choices, Marshall. Option A, you can continue to be a negative, whiny pain in the butt. And if you do this, you're fired. And you're never going to graduate. And you wasted the last 4 years of your life. Option B, you could start having some fun here. What's it going to be, son? You know what I said? Dr. Case, let's have a little fun here. Let's have a little fun. Well, that was the best consulting advice I ever got in my life. If you want to go into the consulting field, to figure out that the world is populated by idiots doesn't take that much effort. Just look around. Anybody can do that. The challenge is, what can you do to make things better? Anybody can sit there and talk about what's wrong with the world. It doesn't take a genius to do that. I just read a study, by the way, and it was a fascinating study. The average person in the United States spends 15 to 20 hours a month either complaining about their bosses or listening to someone else complain about their bosses. Now think about that. Well, I, of course, not having done this research, decided, this is all bullshit. This isn't really true, right? I doubted it was true. The first client I call on, I talk to 200 people. I ask them a question. How many hours a month do you spend complaining about your boss or listening to somebody else complain? Answer, 15 to 20 hours a month. It was amazing. Well, one thing I like about the idea of being an entrepreneur, you don't waste your life doing that. Anybody can do that. What's important is just go out and make things better, make things different. Now, after I left UCLA, I went to Loyola. This is where I began my esteemed consulting career, and the client was called the BAP Geon Automotive Corporation. I worked 2 days for the BAP Geon Automotive Corporation, and you know how much money I got paid? $50. I didn't exactly start at the top. So I got paid $50 for working 2 days for the BAP Geon Automotive Corporation. I gave a class on leadership with my partner Frank Wagner, and as a reward for sitting through our entire class, they got beer at the end. So basically, they were kind of all bribed to hang around, and they got beer at the end. And not only did I get $50, if I did a good job, I was also able to get beer. So that's basically how I started into business. Then after that, went to work with the Center for Creative. I went to work with Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard, which, by the way, was a very, very great experience. And working with Paul Hersey taught me some great lessons. Number one, don't use big words. Don't try to sound smart. Just talk like a regular human being and talk to people in the way that you would like people to talk to you. Another guy worked with us named Ken Blanchard. Now, if I'm a successful entrepreneur, Ken Blanchard must be a mega successful entrepreneur. How many of you have heard of Ken Blanchard before? Well, he wrote a book called The 1 Minute Manager, and he sold 11 million books so far. Ken Blanchard also worked with us, a great guy. And one of the things we learned working with Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard is keep it simple. And by the way, if you want to go into consulting business, did someone die out there, right?
It's the dog.
It's the dog, okay, that's fine, that's fine. Keep it simple, and if you want to go into consulting business, there's kind of a common misconception. When you deal with high-level people, they like things that are complicated. Let me help you. The higher up you go, the less they like things that are complicated. They don't have any time. They need things they can understand, they need things that are simple, and they need things they can do pretty much now. So what happened next? I'm at Loyola, go to work for Paul Hersey. Then came probably the biggest entrepreneurial decision, the scariest entrepreneurial decision I ever had to make. I was now knocking down probably $180,000 a year. I'm about 29 years old. Now again, you factor 27 years of inflation into that number. Today's numbers, that's what, $700,000-800,000 a year. That's a lot of money for a kid. Paul Hersey wanted to go in the video business. I quit working with him. Lyda was 9 months pregnant. I was scared to death. I quit working with him and started out on our own business. Now, this was incredibly frightening to me. And for the next 5 years of my life, I was motivated by pure fear. Why? Well, for the last at least 29 years of my life, I've had the same guaranteed base salary. That would be 0. Nobody ever wrote me a salary check for 29 years. For 29 years, I always knew one thing. If I'm going to eat, where's the food coming from? It's coming from here. I was scared to death. And one thing I will say for those of you that want to be entrepreneurs, just get ready to work your butt off, because you basically will work all the time. Now, let me give you some good news, though, about being an entrepreneur. This is a pitch for being an entrepreneur today. In the old days, I used to think corporate people were lazy. I can remember going to IBM corporate headquarters in 1980. You could have shot a cannonball down the halls in Armonk, New York, and hit no one. At 5 o'clock, that place was empty. These people worked 35 or 40 hours a week. They took 5-week vacations. I thought, these people are lazy. I'm going to help all of you. Unfortunately for you, those days be gone. Corporate people today work their butts off. They work as hard as I do, and let me help you with something else. They're scared to death. They're scared to death. They're all afraid their jobs are going to go away. They're afraid somebody's going to steal their jobs anyway. So if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, let me help you. You already are one. There's no security in corporations anyway. Those people are not going to care about you. And if they don't hit their numbers for 2 months, your butt is gone. It's gone. You're an entrepreneur anyway, so you might as well just think like one. Because basically, it's interesting, I worked with my cousin Alan, who's also in an entrepreneurial business, and he had a chance to go to work for Kodak. And he said it was very hard for him to turn it down, but he did. Many years later, you know what he's decided? I thought I took a risk. The real risk would have been working for Kodak. That was the real risk. Because basically, there's no security there. Well, we're entering into a very tough period today. Globalization, competition, it's hard out there. You need to think like an entrepreneur anyway. If you go to work for a big company, think like an entrepreneur. If you go out on your own, think like an entrepreneur. Why? You are. Let me help all of you. Next time you go home and look in the mirror, there's your job security. It's it. You know where it's coming from? It's coming from in here. Don't count on anybody else to give it to you, because basically those days are gone. So what happened? I left working with Paul Hersey, scared to death, and we started our own business called Kilty Goldsmith and Company. Well, Kilty Goldsmith and Boone was our original name, and those of older can remember it's called KGB, which back there had a few interesting connections with the Cold War. So we started our own business, KGB. We used to have these T-shirts that said, "I survived 2 days with the KGB." We gave to people at the end of training programs. We started our business, Kilty Goldsmith and Boone, and it was very, very frightening. There was no security. We worked all the time, and we did training. And one thing you're going to find out in an entrepreneurial world is you're always overcommitted and you're always behind schedule. One of our clients, we had great clients. Some of our first clients were McKinsey & Company, IBM, Warner Lambert. These are all mega corporations. So we're working with Warner Lambert. We work with their CEO, Ward Hagen. Then what happens is we did a training program. Hugely successful. Well, now they want to buy another training program. That's a good thing. But we get real busy. And we keep saying, we'll design this new training program next week. Next week. Next week. All of a sudden we look up and we got about 6 weeks before we got to do a training program that's supposed to be given to hundreds of people in this multi-billion-dollar corporation. We have no idea what we're going to talk about. So in a state of panic, I'm running around, and we came up with this idea of, since we don't know really what we're going to say, maybe it would be neat if all the executives found out what their coworkers thought about them. So we came up with this idea of customized individual 360-degree feedback. We developed one of the first customized 360-degree feedback forms in history. By the way, do all of you know the term 360-degree feedback? That's feedback from your subordinates, your coworkers, and everybody. This is pretty common now. When I started, nobody had ever done this. We developed one of the first 360-degree feedback forms in history that was customized for a corporation, and that's how I got into that business. That ended up becoming a very positive, very huge business for years. And we developed customized leadership feedback forms that have been used by probably over 1 million people. And again, it just started out from pure luck, state of panic, and not knowing what I was doing. Now, after working with Warner Lambert, what happened next? Well, we worked for Warner Lambert. Business was good. And I learned a great lesson working in Coca-Cola. We did this for Coca-Cola. My partner Joe and I make a presentation. And if you ever work in a big company, this might help you. Or if you're ever selling to a big company, I should say, this might help you. Joe makes a presentation at Coke, big executives, and he feels a little bit awkward about how much we're billing him, so he starts apologizing. He says, you know, sir, I know this sounds like a lot of money. One of the Coke executives raised his hand and said, Joe, we spill more than that every day. You know what I'm thinking? Charge more. We spill more than that every day, charge more. Well, I'm going to help you. If you do work for big companies, they're dealing with so many billions of dollars. Whatever you charge them is paper clips anyway. It's basically all irrelevant. If you do a good job, you know what? Whatever you charge them, it's worth it. If you do a crap job, it's worth nothing. So the key is, my advice, if you want to go into this type of field, take the high road. Take the high road, shoot for the top, charge a lot of money. Why? It doesn't take that much more time. And the other thing is you get more respect, they're going to pay more attention to you, and if you deliver the goods, they don't really care. I also learned that working in IBM. When I worked with Paul, we sold the largest management development program ever sold in history. I was scared to death. We go into this huge, huge building in IBM. My whole business experience up until this point in time is pumping gas in Valley Station, Kentucky. IBM was the most respected company in the world. I am scared to death. We go into this meeting. The first part of the, by the way, my goal in the meeting was don't urinate on yourself. That was it. I thought, if I can get through this meeting and don't urinate on yourself, you've done a fine job here, right? I am so scared. My hands are shaking. I'm just scared to death. And all these people, the first part of the meeting for 15 minutes is basically, aren't we all rich? They're talking about buying cars and going on fancy vacations. And, you know, I was brought up poor. I don't have a whole lot to say here, so I'm just kind of sitting there. And my whole goal is just don't act like a complete idiot. Well, we start out, and my partner, Paul, gets to talk in. He's finally, you know, after about 10 minutes of aren't we rich, these are important people, so they decide, let's get down to business. So the big executive at IBM looks at his watch and looked at Paul Hersey and said, okay, Hersey, what can you do for us? Paul looks at this guy. He taught me the value of having nerve. He looked at this guy and said, I have no idea what you want. So if you can't tell me what you want, I probably can't do anything for you. What do you want? I thought, well, that's interesting. Well, then the guy says, well, you know, Hersey, he says the bottom 20%, they're pretty hopeless anyway. We're not going to help them. And the top 20% don't need help. The middle 60%, those are the ones you want me to help. We want you to help those people. We want you to educate those people. Do you think you can do that for us? What do you think of that? Paul looked at this guy, who was one of the most important business people in the world, and said, that's one of the dumbest things I ever heard in my life. Well, I'm sitting there thinking, well, it's good. I don't have to worry about urinating on myself. He has already done it, right? So let's go. Game over. I thought, money's gone, and we're out of here, right? Well, the guy looked at his watch, which is a little signal, like, okay, son, you got about 2 minutes here. You better have something to say. He said, what do you mean by that? Paul said, number one, I know your values in IBM. There's no way you want to write off the bottom 20% of the company. I know you may have said that, but I know in your heart you don't mean it. And he said, at the top end, that's the biggest potential for training and development anyway, and that's where you're going to get the biggest return. That's why I said that. The guy looked at Paul and said, you're exactly right. That was one of the dumbest things I ever said. You know what I learned from him? you got to have the guts to stand up and say what you believe. You may die. You know what? At least it's you that dies, right? You got to have the guts. And he just stood up, looked this guy in the eye, told him what he thought. Then the meeting progresses, and Paul starts telling stories. And he looked over at me. And again, I'd been a college professor here at Loyola. And he throws me a marker, and he says, Marshall knows a lot about this. Marshall puts them up on the chart. So I start writing up on the flip charts. And I look out in the room, and there are like these 8 executives there. And they start raising their hands. And they're raising their hands so I can call on them, talk. And it was like I was a professor again. And I'm calling on people, and I'm speaking, and they're all raising their hands. And after that meeting, we got the business, which was the biggest account, as I said, in history up into that time in this field. I looked at Paul, and I said, thank you. I said, I will never be scared again. I will never be scared again. And that was true up until many years later. Many years later, I look out in the audience, and there's Bill Clinton, who's President of the United States, and Hillary Clinton, and Barbara Streisand, and many senators, and lots of other distinguished people, and I had to give up and give a speech. And you know what my goal was? Don't urinate on yourself. And to make this one worse, my wife, daughter, and son were in the audience. So if they weren't there, I could always go home and lie. But since they were there, I kind of had a hard time. I'd have to listen to this the rest of my life. So I think very important, put yourself in a position where you're around some very, very good people. Listen to them, take a chance, and see what happens. Now, we went to work. We started our own business. Starting your own business is pretty traumatic. We did lots of stupid things. We did lots and lots of stupid things. I mean, I don't know how much money we wasted, but it'd be a big number. Had any of you ever heard of America's Cup boat racing? Yeah, we bought an America's Cup boat. Yeah, we bought our own little America's Cup boat. And by the way, it was after the race. The price goes down a little bit after the race. But we bought our own America's Cup boat to have America's Cup boat races for our clients. Now, this is one of the dumbest damn ideas in the world. I have no idea how much in 7 years we lost on this boat, but it was like having a dark hole just pouring money into it. So we did all kinds of idiotic little adventures here and there. But the other thing is, try things. You know, if you try things, you might win, and if you don't, you might not, but at least go out and give it a try. Then I had a very, very good thing happen in my life. I got ranked in the Wall Street Journal as one of the top 10 executive educators in the world. Now, this was pure dumb luck. It wasn't that I wasn't a good educator. I may have deserved it. But you know what? Nobody knew who I was. They interviewed a friend. They asked him who else he'd recommend. He recommended another friend, another friend. Everybody they interviewed was people that hired me. So all of a sudden, I went from being nobody to one of the top 10 executive educators in the world. This was a good thing. Now, by the way, if you're ever around the press, let me give you a couple of guidelines. Guideline number 1, kiss butt. Don't kid yourself. They can make you or they can kill you. Let me help you with something else. They don't care. And by the way, it's more fun for them to kill you than it is to make you. They don't care. So I felt very, very fortunate. I'm in the Wall Street Journal. I get ranked as one of the top 10 executive educators. And the other thing I did that really helped me in life is I do a lot of volunteer work. And a nice thing about doing good deeds is you never know when it's going to come back. Now, I'll give you a couple of stories about volunteer work that ended up helping my life. One, when I was a kid. Back in Kentucky, I was in charge of something called the March of Dimes bread drive. We were in the poorest neighborhood in the county. We had to raise money for charity. And the deal is, you knock on the door, you ask for a donation. If they give you a donation, you give them bread. My high school should have come in last place. We came in first place. Why? I told everybody, we're not going to follow the rules. You knock on the door, you give them the bread, and then you ask them if they want to give you money. If they want to give you money, you take the money. If they don't want to give you money, they're too poor, you're going to throw the damn bread away anyway, keep the bread. We came in first place by 20%. Why? We didn't try to bribe people with loaves of bread. We just gave them the bread. Well, that little experience gave me an interesting business philosophy: give people the bread. In my experience, deal with good people, give them stuff. just give things away, and it always comes back to help you. Now, I've done a ton of volunteer work, and I donated everything I did to the Red Cross. I was a National Volunteer of the Year in the Red Cross in 1984. I got to go to Africa with the Famine Relief Campaign, which was a very moving experience. And you never know how things happen, how they work out in the end. After going to the Red Cross in Africa, I got to meet the head of the Red Cross, who introduced me to the head of the Girl Scouts, Frances Hesselbein. Peter Drucker said Frances Hesselbein was the greatest leader he'd ever met in his life. She was on the cover of Business Week as a great leader. She won the Presidential Medal of Freedom Award from President Clinton as a great leader. So I get to meet Frances Hesselbein. Great experience for me. I donated everything I did to the Girl Scouts. Sure enough, she retires from the Girl Scouts and forms the Peter Drucker Foundation. She introduces me to Peter Drucker. Now, do all of you know who Peter Drucker is, right? Peter Drucker is a great man, died several years ago, but died in November, but would be considered the guru of all gurus in management development. I was on the board of the Peter Drucker Foundation for 10 years, and working with Peter Drucker, just a fantastic and wonderful experience for me. I got to work with a guy who basically taught me everything. Why? I did volunteer work. And what he did was basically help me. The first book I did was called The Leader of the Future. The names on the cover were Peter Drucker, Frances Hesselbein, Richard Beckhart, and me. I was so far below any of those people, it's hard to even imagine. But by the fifth book, I was one of them. So what I learned is work with great people, and we're going to do some Q&As. Before we do Q&As, one final point, I was also in the New Yorker. That was another key in my life. Do all of you know the New Yorker magazine? They wrote the story of my life. Now, I want you to imagine some woman from New York follows you around for 2 months, every day, writes an 8,000-word story about your life, which you don't even get to read, and sends it off to 1 million people. Well, that's what happened to me. This was very scary in a way, and I thought, who's the customer of this event? Peter Drucker always taught me, always ask who's the customer. I thought, you know who the customer is? My unborn great-grandchildren. This is a great opportunity for them to know who I was after I die. You know what I decided? I'm going to act like me. I did. It was one of those positive profiles ever written in the New Yorker. My business probably tripled after that. But the thing I learned is also just be yourself. Why? At least it's you. And it's easier to remember who you are. Now, before I wrap up, let's take about 10 minutes of Q&A, 5 minutes of Q&A.
Okay, that's fine.
And we're going to take about 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A, and here's what we're going to do. I want everybody to take 20 seconds, turn around, and get into a group with 4, 5, or 6 people. If your marks get set, go. Go, 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 go. 4, 5, or 6 people. Okay, stop, stop. You now have 60 seconds to come up with the best question you can. Go, 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 go. Okay, stop. Stop, stop, stop. All right, shh, stop. All right, who is in a team that came up with a good question? Raise your hands. All right, right here. What's your and by the way, speak very loudly. What's your question? Go ahead.
To do all the volunteer work, how do you find the time between maintaining your entrepreneurship and finding the time to do your volunteer?
Doing your business.
How do I find the time to do the volunteer work? You know what? There are poor people out there doing volunteer work. Very poor people doing volunteer work. You know what I tell myself? If they can do it, so can I. And I really don't buy that. I'm too busy and too important to help other people. You're not that busy. You're not that important. And there are poor people who are a lot poorer than we are doing a lot of good things. So I just don't buy that excuse. Yes, yes.
Our first question was, a lot of the things that you talked about, you mentioned luck and how you're just lucky that you got in the New York Times.
Right.
And that all those things happen. How much of it is luck and how much of it is actually up to you?
Well, after somebody opens the door, it's you. And Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, to be honest, most people are going to die. That was me. The good thing is having somebody open the door. Because the lucky part is meeting great people who open the door for you. So, I'd say part of it is also I worked hard to impress him. Because if I hadn't impressed him, he ain't opening no doors. So it's a little of both. Yes?
You talked about international clients, so I would add to that, when you're working with people that are from different cultures,
Right.
whether they're from different cultures in here or
Right.
internationally, how do you adjust?
Well, I work all around the world. My next trip is San Diego, Chicago, Hong Kong, Singapore, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, London, and Houston. You know what I find? The cultures are very different, but the stuff I do is about people. It's all the same. People are all the same everywhere. Yes, other questions? Back there, Element.
Yeah. How do you stay motivated, like especially in the beginning, since you were just selling your ideas? How did you stay motivated and actually knowing that they were worth the money that you charged?
Well, let me tell you a couple things. One, if you have to ask yourself how you stay motivated, you're in the wrong business. You know when I'm going to retire? Dead. Everyone in my field retires the same day. Dead. Peter Drucker died, then he retired. Frances Hesselbein is 90. She's still working. Richard Beckhardt, I was with him on his deathbed when he was 82 years old. He was still giving people advice. You know what I felt like saying? Dick, buddy, it's okay. You ain't going to collect the consulting fees. You're dead, right? You know what? I listened to this guy. He was still giving people advice. He knew he was dead in 2 days. You know what I decided? I want to be like you when I grow up. If you got to ask yourself how you motivate yourself, you're in the wrong business. You got to do what you love, then you don't have to ask. If you're not doing what you love, you're in the wrong business. In the brown, behind him, yes.
You mentioned that one of the tools that you use is a 360-degree feedback
Yes.
tool. Based on those results, who would you say, if you can name names,
Yes.
would be the person that you turned around, made the biggest turnaround, and why?
I want to give you two quick stories. Answering our question, the two turnaround stories. One, Boeing. My friend Alan Mullally at Boeing, of all the people I've ever coached, had the biggest improvement. He was the client I spent the least amount of time with. Very humbling experience. You know what I thought? Damn, if you'd never met me, you'd really gotten a lot better here, right? Well, he taught me a great lesson. You know what he said? The way I teach my coaching process, he said this was never about you. It was about me and my team. And he said, I manage 40,000 people at Boeing. Every day I go to work, you know, I tell myself, this ain't about me, it's about them. He taught me a great lesson as a coach. It's not about me. I said, Alan, what should I learn from you? He said, Marshall, you got one job, pick the right clients. You pick the right clients, you're always going to win. You pick the wrong clients, nobody's going to win. You know what I said? Thank you, sir. Second story. Have any of you ever seen the movie Wall Street? I was a coach for the real-life role model for Gordon Gekko in Wall Street. Michael Douglas, the actor, followed this guy around to learn how to act like an arrogant jackass. Now here's what happened. Here's the CEO, here's the management committee, here's this guy. He makes so much money, they put him on the management committee. Uh-oh, guess who he's rude to now? The CEO. Guess who he's talking down to now? The big guy. What's the big guy say? Fix him. They hired me to be his coach. I'll say his name is Joe. I said, Joe, that score on treating, and his score on treating people with respect from both direct reports and coworkers, 0.1 percentile. Now, it's hard to get a 0.1 from one group. He got a 0.1 from two groups. They hired me to be his coach. I said, Joe, that 0.1, I said, that's not real impressive. I said, how do you treat people at home? He said, Marshall, I'm totally different at home. I said, that's great. You single or married? He said, I'm married. I said, that's wonderful. You think your wife might be home now? He said, yeah, I think she is. I said, good. We're going to call her right now. We're going to read her these scores. We're going to find out how shocked she really is. We call his wife. What's his wife say? You're an ass. One kid, one kids. Ass, ass. I said, a pattern is beginning to emerge. Now, I said, I can't help make money. You already make more than God. But I said, you want to have a funeral that nobody attends other than for business reasons. Because that's where this train is headed. He looked at me and said, if I don't get results, they'll fire me, won't they? Oh, I said, not only will they fire you, this could be massive dancing in the halls when your butt clears the door. He said, I'm going to change. Not because of you, not because of the company. I'm going to change because I have a 13-year-old son. 30 years from today, if a man like you read a report like that about my son, I'd be ashamed he was my son. He said, my son already acts this way. Wonder where he learned that. Maybe that was me. In 1 year, he got ranked a 53.7 percentile in terms of treating people with respect. Every year he writes me a Christmas card. 4 years ago, the card said, thank you for the help you gave me years ago. I still have better relationships with people, especially my wife and kids. This guy's probably worth $150 million. What's another $1 million mean to him? He ain't gonna get another house. He ain't gonna get another dog. If he gets another wife, he ain't gonna have $150 million. Thank you very much.
You're wonderful.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm going to ask Marshall to stand up here for a couple of minutes.